Hello all and welcome to Ace Reviews. Today we will be reviewing the McFarlane Toys H.R. Geiger Li II sculpture. The sculpture came out in 2004 and was part of McFarlane Toys Artist Series, I believe alongside Clive Barker's Tortured Souls. Before we get into the figure, let's take a look at the box. Here you just have sort of just your regular display box. It's kind of looks similar to the box sets that McFarlane Toys does. This figure was, sculpture was released in 2004, and it was released through Spawn.com as well as I believe retail as well, but probably more like comic shops is where you would have found this. I did get this aftermarket, so I did pay a little bit more than what it was originally retailed at, but definitely worth the price. So let's take a look at the box. Here obviously you have H.R. Geiger, his name, www.hrgeigermuseum.com, and on the side here you have Li II, and 2004, that's when the sculpture was made. And just this writing here says sculpture based on the artwork of famous Swiss surrealist H.R. Geiger, and the sculpture is recommended for ages 17 and up. On the back here, as you can see, we have a picture of Li II, just sort of different prototype images, especially for the close-up of the sculpture's face, especially here as well. A little bit of Geiger's artwork down below. Here on the other side, we've got a little bit more of the same. You know, it says Li II, repeats what the sculpture's based on. So pretty cool. The original artwork actually came out back in 1974. So 2004, it's what, 40 years later they made a sculpture off of this. So really cool to see. And of course, the back here. The back kind of gives you an explanation of what you're looking at. Here it's photos from the H.R. Geiger Museum. You got the outside here. Look at the Harkonnen chairs from Jodorowsky's canceled Dune film that Geiger made. Right here is a mural of the alien xenomorph. And the H.R. Geiger Museum is located at Chateau Street, Germain, CH 1663, Gruyères, Switzerland. I believe that's right. Sorry if I'm butchering that. And this little blurb right here says, Li II, McFarlane Toys worked closely with Swiss surrealist and Oscar winner H.R. Geiger to create this special edition three-dimensional sculpture of Geiger's classic Li II painting. Geiger's biomechanical dreamscapes and Lovecraftian creature formed the cornerstone of his fame and served as the visual inspiration for director Ridley Scott's film Alien. So yeah, Lee Tobler was actually a Swiss model and actress who Geiger worked with for Li I and Li II. Both pieces of art were released in 1974. And no Li I sculpture, but we got a Li II sculpture. So without further ado, let's take a look at the sculpture itself. And let me just pan in a bit here. Alright, so this is her. This is Li II. Right off the bat, as you can see, it's extremely detailed. I mean, just as McFarlane Toys has done with a lot of their late 90s, early 2000s figures, like Movie Maniacs, you know, the Metal Gear Solid series that they had, McFarlane's Monsters, just a lot of the early 2000s stuff, probably between 1999 and 2005. A lot of inspiration was coming from him, and kind of moving away from the articulation of his figures and more towards the detail-oriented stuff like this. And while this isn't a figure, it's a sculpture, it still very much carries McFarlane's presence and presentation, I should say. So if we take a look here, we can just zoom in and you can get a good idea of all of the detail that went into this. I mean, this sculpture was worked very closely with Geiger himself, I believe, or at least his foundation, in making sure that McFarlane adapted, you know, the painting as best as he could. There is a few differences that I noticed that we can get into in a second, but just appreciating this on all of its detailed level. I mean, it's incredible. You know, especially you have right up here where the snake comes down, it definitely, you start getting sort of this corroded sort of look, that bringing it out in a three-dimensional format is just beautiful, because it actually makes the eye go more towards the bottom of the sculpture and gives you more of the detail of the outlines of the, like the scarring on Lee's face, and sort of the cracked aging of the sculpture and what its presentation is supposed to be. And you know, obviously that as well being juxtaposed, sort of the mechanical nature of the piece is pretty incredible. Before we do more detail, I do just kind of want to show sort of, this is the front of the figure, this here is the side, and as you can see, it's unfinished. Actually, both sides as well as the back are unfinished. So this is really just kind of a piece of thick plastic that was glued on to the back to kind of give a more three-dimensional look, make it stand up better. The glue job, I will say, is not the best. You can kind of see where the glue sort of spurted out right there, and then, you know, on the other side, you know, you can kind of see, yeah, right there, there's a darkness a little bit up there as well. So not the best glue job, but also I don't really care. I'm not going to be showing this piece that way, and no one's ever going to see it. So one thing that's weird is there is a hole right there, and I'm wondering if there was something that's supposed to go in there or not. There was nothing that came in the package. I think it's just for handling, but I thought it was kind of odd to have that there and not at least make note of it. But again, you're not really going to be seeing this part. You know, if you do end up using this piece as kind of like a bookend, so you know, you put your books right here, you can do that, but you know, why would you? It's, everybody wants to face it out like this. So I mean, yeah, it's generally speaking, in terms of the piece coming outward towards you, I think they really accomplished that, and I don't need the finished sides and back. I mean, this is more than enough, and you don't ever really see that part looking at it like this. One thing too that you should connotate, and one of the differences that I was speaking about earlier, is the color scheme. Now, if you remember from the original artwork, for those of you who have seen it, for those of you who haven't, this is it here. Color scheme is extremely different, and that was one of the big changes that they did with this collaboration, is they changed the color scheme from this that you're seeing right here to that. This to that. And what's interesting is I think the fact that they included a little bit more blue, a little bit more gray, and definitely some more brown for the darker rusted tones, it brings out a different quality of the piece that I don't think the printed artwork from 1974 really had. And that's one reason why I like to say this is a collaboration and not necessarily an interpretation by McFarlane, because you can definitely tell that Geiger himself, or at least some people with the Geiger Association, had some input, because otherwise they wouldn't have approved these changes. The color scheme itself I love, because you have the white both in the middle of the face as well as right here from the original artwork, but instead of going a bit more white up here and having the sort of dark grayish black mechanicality of the piece sort of seep in, they decided to go with more blue. And I think that gives a more ethereal look and ethereal feel to the piece, and makes it seem a bit more organic, rather the transitional period between man and machine. And then here it's more human before it goes down into sort of this dingy machinery. So if we actually take a look here, you can see the deep blues that go all the way back in to the more recessed areas of the sculpture, you know, and they touch it up very conveniently, very well, but you can already see at the beginning of this that there is some of that brown. Like right there, we got a little bit right up there, a little bit there, as well as on the sides here. But then as you go down, it kind of rejuvenates itself with the white. It kind of brings a bit of life and love to the piece. Shows a bit of innocence and purity that you otherwise wouldn't look at if you were looking at just the top. But as we get lower, you can see that the brown starts to come in, and the rusted, dirty, dingy look of the piece really comes to life and shows the mechanicality of how fragile our being is. And that's a theme that, you know, H.R. Geiger was very much a part of and very much integrated into his work. All the browns in the inner workings back there. You have, you know, the brownish for the logo and his name there on the base. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Just trying to get into the deep, dark detail, showing how dirty some of the things we want to look away from can be. You know, even just a little bit of darkness can really bring out some of the better features of this. In terms of how the sculpture was made, it was actually made from hard plastic as well as sort of a rubberized plastic. This piece here is rubberized plastic, as well as these pieces with the spray can, the two little hands with the spray can, and these legs. Those are rubberized pieces. Everything else, as far as I know, is all hard plastic, which is incredible in my opinion, because the detail, especially for some of this harder plastic, which can be cheaply made, won't usually give you that kind of detail, but here they went all out. They didn't care. They wanted to make sure you saw everything. But this piece, especially if you're an art enthusiast and an H.R. Geiger fan, is totally worth the money. Like I said, I paid aftermarket price for it, but you know, it's definitely worth having. If you're a figure collector and you're not one to, you know, really have pieces that don't articulate, maybe pass on this, but this is for anyone and everyone who considers themselves a fan. And I was so happy to pick this up. And let me just give you guys one more shot of it here. As you can see, there's a tank right there for God knows what. But yeah, just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, completely worth it as a desk item or a piece to put on a shelf. Something that you have your friends over and they see it and want to ask you about it. You know, this definitely has that quality and that nature to it. And I mean, as you can see from what I've been showing you, you know, this really is a 3D sculpture. You know, there's parts that come out, there's parts that recess in, there's, you know, a million different things that are going on in this piece, and a lot of them sort of juxtapose each other in terms of depth, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, there she is. McFarlane Toys H.R. Geiger Li II in all of her beauty. Well, that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're a fan of the channel. That really does help. And until next time, thank you so much. This has been Ace Reviews signing off.